Hello, everyone. Welcome back to This Way Out. Before we get started, I wanted to be transparent about some potentially controversial material that's going to be discussed. My friend Raymond Dörfel, who is my guest in this episode, experienced some very serious trauma in his life growing up. And his healing came about through the ayahuasca ceremony process. Now, for those who are not familiar with the ayahuasca ceremony, it involves the use of a hallucinogenic tea. Now, here on This Way Out, and myself personally, I am not one to judge how people find their healing, especially if go through their process, they find themselves in a better place emotionally, physically, mentally, genuinely a better person on the other end. And I believe that's what's taken place with Raymond. Despite what you may feel personally about the ayahuasca sessions and the process that's involved for the healing to take place in individuals, I ask that you keep an open mind and keep in mind that for Raymond, this process worked, and he is genuinely a better person for it. I also would like to say that if you are interested in ayahuasca ceremonies, I ask that you do your research and ensure that you are taking the proper precautions when it comes to the ceremony. There are people who are experienced, who are qualified, and who are experts in the ayahuasca ceremony. And they are familiar, versed, and experts in how to properly conduct the therapy process. So, if an ayahuasca session is something that you are interested in, I encourage you to take the proper steps to ensure that you are getting the correct treatment, so that way you do not take any unnecessary risks. I respect Raymond very much. I trust his judgment. I trust his perspective. And I believe that he has something to offer someone who could be experiencing or may have experienced similar traumatic events that he experienced. I'm personally open to whatever therapies are available to help people get through their traumatic experiences and move towards a better, healthier life. With that being said, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the This Way Out podcast, a part of the This Way Out project. My name is Miguel Mata, and I would like to personally thank you for tuning in today to share some of your valuable time. This podcast is all about being a source of positive energy and messages. Here, I try to help those struggling with issues that can weigh heavily on the mind and make the world we live in seem like a dark and impossible place. I do this by sharing advice from personal experience, through stories from ordinary people who have overcome their own challenges, and other uplifting stories to help shed some light on the world we live in. In the end, my mission is to support you and help you feel better about yourself and your surroundings. All I'm asking for is a chance. Let's get started. Hello, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to This Way Out. Miguel Mata. And today we're doing a Skype interview with a very special individual who has once again, another unique, special story to share with us. And another story that I think that we can all take something away from that speaks to a lot of things that I think that we can all relate to. So my guest today, talking to me via Skype, is Mr. Raymond. Now, Dörfel is how I would say it as an American. But your last name is not. You actually pronounce it. How do you pronounce your name, please?
It's actually a German surname, so it's Raymond Dörfel.
Okay, I'll take your word for it, Mr.
You can use the American way. That's fine.
Okay, Mr. Dörfel. Where are you calling us today from?
I live in the great city of Groningen. That's the top north city of Holland. Well, obviously, I don't look Dutch. I'm not tall. I'm not blonde. My mother is blonde, but she's short, and my father is Indonesian. So actually, I'm half half. I'm half Indonesian and half Dutch, because my father came here when he was 3. He came from the island of Jakarta, Bandung, with together with my grandfather and my grandmother, because they were part of the Royal Dutch Indonesian Army. And with the independence of Indonesia, they had to move here. So, and when my father was enrolled into the army, they still had, an enrollment. He met my mother close to Groningen. That's like the second province. It's called Friesland. And they hooked up and they got married, and then here I was. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a story, but that's what I'm here to tell you. What happened between when my mother got pregnant and between my 42nd birthday somewhere. So it's 42 years of extremely, well, actually beautiful processes, painful processes, but I've learned so much about myself and why things have happened in my life.
I appreciate
So
you. I definitely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to say, tell you that I appreciate you doing this with me today, because this is what you would call a grassroots project, and just getting started, and the message is getting out, and for me to be talking to someone overseas about their messages and stuff like that, it makes me feel good. And I just want to share my appreciation with you and say thanks for doing this. I know you got in touch with me because you heard I was doing this thing via another Facebook page I think we were a part of. But yeah, long story short, I greatly appreciate it.
you're mostly welcome, and thank you for having me here and share the story, because this is a story I hardly ever share. Mostly with people I'm intimate with. And for the past 1.5 years, I got the message and the feeling, this needs to get out, because this is the first time I've ever had like a real website. I've been coaching people for years, and you couldn't find me. You could hardly find me online, because I was always hiding, underneath the radar, and not because I did stupid things or whatever, but I was afraid. I was afraid, nobody's going to listen to me, and who wants this story, and it's going to be stupid, whatever. But that feeling has passed away. I practically literally buried that feeling. So, and then this comes on my path. I mean, I even had an interview like last week with an Australian guy who asked me the same question. For example, he asked me about my ayahuasca ceremonies, and he was doing a podcast as well. I mean, it's like dropping out of the sky. I
Isn't
don't
it
know what's
funny,
going on.
dude?
Yes,
I'm
it is.
tell look, there's something about this that maybe I'll share with you later. But it's happening. There is something happening. There's a movement happening of positive energy and positive messages that's happening underneath the surface of what most people see, and it's rising. This positive energy, this positive movement, where people are just kind of empowering each other, right? Like you and I, we're empowering each other to share our stories. We're empowering each other to be strong in our and within ourselves, and to be positive, etc. Since I started this thing, I've been exposed to so many different projects that are similar to mine, similar to what you're doing, and it really makes me feel good. It's like, aha, it's happening. People are caring for each other again.
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
That you
it's a good
see a
feeling.
movement where people take more responsibility for themselves, and people they ask themselves questions: how do I want to live, and why did these things happen? And then if they found out, because they give meaning and reasons to the things that have happened in their lives, and then they make changes, and then they become the true leaders, because true leaders lead by example. Now, a lot of our current leaders don't do that thing. So, that's the way I look at it, and that's fine, because you always learn and build upon the last generation, right?
Right.
So it is time for us to not to be the sheep and the sheep herder. Like, there's a guy, I'm going to follow him. He's a guru, and I'm going to worship him and do everything he says. No, no, it's about inner leadership. So this
Right.
means you look inside yourself and you live the life that's important to you, and how
Right.
you want to put yourself out, and how you want to be of service towards others. So this is a different process than years ago, but this means that all those leaders who are doing or making these steps are doing this because they have been through a lot of shit.
I consider us a community of people. So we're a community. We're there are those of us that are trying to be community leaders and move that needle more towards the positive. I'd like to, if we could, just kind of redirect and come back down to the purpose of this visit, which is, um, we all experience challenges and obstacles that we have to overcome in our lives. Some people experience harder challenges than others. Not to say that any one challenge for one person is greater, less, or more than another, but there are just some challenges that are quite significant and can really take the kind of toll on a person where it can be it can definitely feel nearly impossible to overcome. And I know that you have one of those types of stories that there are not just one challenge, but a series of challenges that you've had to overcome. You're at a point now where you feel like you might be headed in a better direction. So I was hoping, if you don't mind, that you could share some of those challenges with us. You can start wherever you like. The floor is yours. Share however you like. Yeah, if you don't mind just sharing some of the stuff that you've had to overcome to get to where you are now.
All right. So let me start by, because this is like we have a little bit of a hook. You started about the needle going towards positivity, but I experienced it differently in my life. I tried to be positive for the biggest part of my life. I tried to be happy. I tried to be always smiling, and I tried to make something good about my life. But I always felt bad. And but because I didn't accept the dark parts of me, I couldn't be in a state of happiness, because I realized what everything I went through. And I'll start with that story, and this is like an entrance. I realized that if you are not willing to accept the darkness you have inside of yourself, all the feelings you have, we call negative, all those difficult feelings we have, if you do not accept those, you can never lead a fulfilling and happy life. It's impossible. So you'll get this positivity moment. Oh, you always have to smile, smile, and you have to be, and it's okay. You don't want to focus on anything negative. No, but why not? Because it's not negative. It's just a judgment about negative feelings, but they're just difficult feelings. So some of the things I'm going to tell you, I know because I did ceremonies like ayahuasca to give me insight, and I verified them with my parents. So I'll start with my when I was born. My father wanted to have an abortion, so my mother went away from my father for a half a year. And just before I was born, he came back because he was sorry, and I was born with my parents actually distrusting each other. My mother was angry. She didn't have any trust in him, and my father felt guilty. So when I was born in pain, and I had like the umbilical, the cord around my neck. So I was born choking and in pain, feeling the emotions of my parents. Uh, and actually, when I realized that in one of my ayahuasca sessions, that was, it was profound. And I asked my parents, did my father want to have an abortion? And they looked at me, how did you know? So, well, I saw that. I saw that. And suddenly I knew, because the body remembers everything, not just not consciously, but subconsciously. And if you can get that out, that subconscious part out, you can get an insight to why the things are in your life the way they are. And my first memory I have when I was young was when I was 3, and I was walking downstairs and in my diapers, and I think it was summer, and I stood in front of the front door and I was crying, but nobody was home. And I asked my mother, so what happened? So, well, she said, well, I was at my mother's, but your father should have been there for you, but he went out to out bowling or playing tennis. And it was so frightening. I was so scared that I blacked out. And at that moment, I made the subconscious decision that whenever something is going on in my life, nobody will be there for me. That was the message I got from my birth. That was the message I got when I was 3. So this was a message that was imprinted into my brain. So I had to do, according to my own beliefs, I had to do everything myself. So then my parents divorced when I was 7. And it was a violent divorce. And my mother, she fled into a stay away from my body house. It's like a house where women go to with their children to be safe from a violent partner, because there was a lot of violence going on in my parents' house. And I couldn't remember that for years. There was a part where I knew we left the house, and a part where we came into the house of my aunt and uncle in a village where we stayed for a few years. And at some point, as well in my ayahuasca sessions, I could see and experience what happened. And I also asked my mother if that happened and if that what I saw was real. And then again, she said, "How did you know?" I said, "Well, I saw that." And I could see myself. I was screaming. I was screaming. I was so in panic and then I held my sister's hand. And she said, you were so in panic for so many days. I had to get out of there because you were going crazy with your sister. And remembering those things wasn't just traumatic. It gave me the opportunity to heal, because the only thing we need is to be conscious and aware of what happened, and then bring it back into love and understanding and compassion. But that was difficult because it took me at least 30 years, 32 years to figure that out. And counting that up, from when I was young, what I experienced in my youth with the divorces and the bullying at school for years, black and blue eyes coming home, and my mother didn't even know, because I always told my mother I fell or I did something stupid, and she would punish me. And that went on for years. My bike in the water, punctured tires, ripped
This is what the
clothes.
bullies would do to you.
Yeah, until my mother found out, and she told me, if you come home again crying, I'll kick your ass too. And then the next day I was on the schoolyard, and I was going out of school, and then there was this one boy who always started it, and he came towards me and who was going to hit me, but I was so afraid, and I can't go home. So what did I do? So I hit him, and I was bullied for almost 1.5, 2 years. And I kept it to myself for years. So this was the first time I ever retaliated. And I hit him so hard, he knocked back. And I hit him so hard in the head afterwards that he had a hole in his head. And then there was this whole uprising in schools. Raymond, he's so violent, he's so aggressive. We need to kick him off school. And we were my sister and me were the only persons of color in the whole village at that time. I'm just brown. It's just like a complexion. But even though there was a lot of discrimination going on as well, especially from my teacher. So
Did
so
you? You
coming
said you
from
grew up in Holland, though, right?
yes,
And in
Holland.
Holland, there's a lot of people of lighter complexion. Well, I mean, I'm sure it was a matter of complexion, race, the but just the fact that you were a foreigner, if you will.
Well, it's a combination. Once my parents divorced, and I felt, well, I was traumatized. When you're young and you're traumatized, you're an easy victim, and
Yeah,
children can smell that. Children can smell it. Look, there's something going on with this guy. Maybe we should
yeah,
we should,
yeah,
we
yeah.
should kick him in the butt. But my parents, they divorced, and I was the only man in the house. So my mother was depressed, and I felt I needed to take care of my mother and my sister. I felt so responsible. I stopped playing. I was very responsible.
How old were you again at this point?
Seven,
You're
7.
7.
I did chores in the house. I did the dishes. I did washing. I even helped cooking, cleaning. I took my sister to school, and I tried to do everything to get the load off my mother. And so this means I always sacrifice myself to being a partner, a therapist, a man in the house, but never the son or never the little boy. So, you can understand that at some point, all my relationships were like a reflection of the relationship I had with my mother. I was the knight in shining armor. I'll help you and I'll save you. And I always met like broken women because I thought I needed to fix everybody, and I was a fixer, but I couldn't fix my mom, so I couldn't fix my partners, and so I helped my partners a lot, and I was always there. I paid for everything. I was an idiot. But
Okay.
an idiot, but in a good way. I tried my best, but it failed, just like I failed when I was young. And every time it failed, when I was in a bad state, they left me. But when I was in a good state, my partners would stay, and it was all fun and games, and it was okay because I was taking care of them. But the moment I felt sad or I had something, they all ran away. So I tried my best to always be strong and always be happy. Yeah, I always try to be positive, because if I was weak, I was going to be left alone. That was my whole experience in life. I was angry, disappointed, sad, but I was always smiling. So um, at night, I think I've cried myself to sleep for I don't know how many years. I didn't want to let anyone know that I was in a bad state, and I felt bad, and I felt lonely, and I felt alone, and I felt all these things, but I had no idea how to get this out of my system. So I coped the best way I could, and I did all my educations, and I did university, and I don't know how many educations and courses I did just to get all kinds of knowledge in my brain, and learn and read all kinds of books, and go to seminars and talk to all kinds of doctors to learn about the body, learn about the mind, learn about psychology, so I could figure out what the hell was going on with me, and obviously help other people as well.
You were aware of your kind of like the double life that you were having to live. Like on the outside, you had to be strong. On the inside, you were
Utter
torn.
chaos.
Yeah,
Yes, torn.
utter
I
chaos.
was torn.
And that was that is the reason why you felt like you had to gain knowledge, like you had to. Were you trying to explain it to yourself? Were you trying to make sense of how you were feeling?
Yes. I tried to figure out everything out in my head because I was afraid of feeling.
Uh-huh.
Uh, that was the whole point. If I know everything, then nothing can touch me anymore. No, nobody can kick me down because I know everything, right?
Right.
This was my point. But obviously it failed. I learned so much. I learned a lot, and it helped me greatly to gain knowledge about the body, and about the mind, and about the heart, and about the connection between another girlfriend. We lived together, and I never wanted to have children. I was so afraid of becoming my own father that I rejected the whole idea. And my first true love, I broke up with her because I was sweating at night. I had nightmares because she wanted to have children, and I was terrified of becoming a father. So
Hmm.
then at that point, I broke up with the love of my life. And years later, I met another woman, and I lived together with her for 6 years, and we had a son, and he's amazing. His name is Noah. He's just like me, and he was diagnosed with high sensibility. He's hyper intelligent. We did tests with him, and he had like an IQ of 149, even though he was unmotivated to do the test. I mean, what the heck? But it's difficult for him as well because his mind is so clogged, just like mine was, and he's experienced so much in his life, and he has difficulty processing everything. And that was my problem too. But I tried really hard to make the relationship work because I was afraid that it would end up as with my parents. But what you're afraid of, you're going to create. So at some point she left, and I was devastated. I think in 2010 she left, and at the end of 2010 I found out that my accountant was well cheating on me in such a way. So I lost like all my money. I had to pay tens of thousands of euros to the IRS, and then I had to sell my house. So I lost my family, I lost my house, and I lost the last part of self-esteem I had. And then I fell into a depression. I fell into a depression because coming from being bullied when I was young for years, and from mental and emotional abuse, and things being told to me, you're a loser, you can't do anything. I wish you were dead, and you're like your mother, you're lazy, and although I started to believe all those things, right? I started to believe everything. I was a failure. I can't do anything, and nobody wants me around. So let's a little kick back. When I was 17, I had a girlfriend, and she was a model, and I was so proud because I never thought I would ever date anyone, let alone a model. But she broke up with me because she was visiting her sister in France, and her sister was an au pair with rich people. And this girlfriend of mine, she saw rich people, and she thought, what, Raymond isn't rich, he's never going to give me that, so I'm probably going to break up with him.
At this point, you're 17, and already she's made. And I'm sure she was young too, right? She was a teenager too, I would imagine. But she pretty much summed up that you weren't going to amount to anything, so she broke up with you. And
Yes.
you were also playing professional soccer at that time. How long were you playing soccer again? Up to that point?
Well, soccer was my life. I've been playing soccer from when I was 6. and I was at some I was 17, so and I was playing for we call it was a professional club in the youth section, and I was so proud. I worked because we had to pay for everything ourselves. I had to travel there on my own because there were no facilitations at that point. But I was willing to do it, and I trained every day. I trained every day because we had a soccer field next to our house. So I was on the soccer field of day in, day out,
Yeah.
training, getting better, getting better. I'm gonna break up with him, and she called me up. Yeah, I'm gonna break up with you because you're never gonna give me enough that I need. So okay, goodbye. And she hung up, and I couldn't sleep for months. I couldn't
Wow.
sleep for months. It was crazy, and I had to get sleeping pills because I was awake every night, and I took the pills, but the pills didn't work. I went crazy. So at some point, I woke up in the middle of the night again, and I went to the toilet with these pills in my hand, and I asked myself two things: either I'm going to flush them down the toilet and make something of my life, or I'm going to eat them and end it all because I was done. But something inside me told me not to do it. So I flushed them down the toilet and made the decision to make something of my life. And I think a few weeks later, I became sick. Kissing disease. You know that disease, kissing
Mm.
disease? I had kissing disease. So I was in bed for 3/4 of a year. They had to carry me out of bed. They had to bring me into bed. And I was a professional soccer player, but I was the professional soccer player. My identity was my soccer playing. I got all my status and from being the soccer player, and I lost that. So this was a huge dent again in my self-esteem. And the moment I sat back in the saddle, I had this motorbike and I drove to, well, I worked at the pizzeria, the pizza place of my father at that point. And I was done with work. I drove home and then I got hit by a car. So then I was in bed again for another 3 weeks. And this time, because I had this huge hole in my shins, I couldn't play professional soccer anymore. And then I got sick, and then I got the motor accident,
You got sick.
and
Yeah.
and it was over. It was over. I can play soccer, but I could never play it on the same level again.
Right.
I lost all my confidence in my own
Right.
body because that was the whole point. I lost
Didn't you
confidence in
say
my.
you had to? I think in our conversation, didn't you say you had to learn how to walk again or something like that? Like your injury was that severe?
Well, I had to. No, well, I didn't know. No, no, no. It wasn't that I needed to learn how to walk again. It just took me a long time because it
Oh,
was
to
a,
rehabilitate.
a
Yeah.
big part of my shin was out. So it took me a long time to be able to walk normally on my legs, let alone
Right.
run.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Because
Yeah.
it needed to heal. No, that's okay. That's okay. But my salvation came later in my life when, well, I was depressed for 4 years. And after 4 years, I wanted to start up a new company. So I met an investor through my, well, then girlfriend. And he invested in a new company when he was like, yes, let's go. So
This is
I
this is
worked.
after the embezzlement, or this is when the embezzlement happened.
This is after I lost everything.
Of this laundry list of things that you've had to get over to that point, you're still here, and but your smile is genuine now, because you
Yes.
did say before, like, your smile wasn't necessarily genuine before, but it is genuine now. At this point, you are considering a new business venture.
Yeah. With an investor, and he invests money, and he becomes like a business partner. And I know in the first year I pay him off 25,000 euros. And I worked really hard, and I was like, yeah, yes, I'm going to pay him off really quick so I can make enough money, and so I don't need to feel like a loser anymore. But even though I paid him 25,000 euros in 1 year, the money only added up, and I found out that he took much more money from percentage wise out of my company, and I didn't even know it because I was a bit naive. I could have read it in the really really the small lines, but I trusted him, and
Yeah.
he took like 40% of my out of my company, even though it was just a loan. Obviously, it was a loan. He was supposed to do all kinds of work, but he didn't. And he was supposed to do all kinds of business aspects and to do the administration, but he gave it away to someone he already had a company with. So this guy took money from double the money from me. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that I started working even harder to pay off. And I worked so hard, I fell into a burnout. I couldn't even get out of bed normally anymore. And I walked outside like this, I'd smile and be happy. And when I came home, I just collapsed. And that was like the lowest low. I lost all my money at first, and then I lost a lot of money again because I stopped I stopped the company with him, and I lost all my money again. And I was at the brink of what am I going to do with my life, and what kind of an example do I want to be for my son? And I'm not saying I have to be super successful and make a lot of money, but I'm talking about how do you pick yourself up when things go down or things go sideways. And this was like the switch. But I didn't know what to do because I'd done all kinds of therapies and coaches and seminars, and nothing really helped. I just gained a lot of extra knowledge, which made it even more difficult to feel. And then one of my friends told me, "You should do ayahuasca." So, oh, well, all right. So after 5 years of knowing about ayahuasca, because I never did any drugs whatsoever,
What is
and
ayahuasca now?
ayahuasca is like a plant that you cook. Some plants, a combination of plants that you cook, and you drink it as a tea. And in this tea is DMT. So DMT is like a chemical your brain makes when you go to sleep. So when you drink DMT, you're in a awake dream state, and in this state you get like what ayahuasca does is it shows you the things that live inside you, and it makes it bigger. So it's actually like a magnifying glass for the things that are going on inside yourself that you're not aware of. And I have to say, the first time I did ayahuasca was in 2016. And I had never felt any love or compassion for myself. I was so hard on myself. When I was working as an instructor, fitness and aerobics, etc. Even I was even going to work with bruised ribs, with splinters from my bone, with a concussion, with like high fever. I would go to work because I wanted to be the best employee, because they have to count on me and I can't be sick. So I pushed my body to the limits that was bringing me like Achilles heel problems and back problems. So I stepped out of my bed like a grandpa every morning, and pushed myself out of it. Man up and get going and work, because you need to work. So obviously that broke up. That my body was going nuts. So, and this burnout showed me that I was way 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 too hard on myself. But what I experienced in this ayahuasca was phenomenal. I closed my eyes, and at some point it started working, and I could hear voices that were telling me, "Welcome home, brother." And it even touches me again because I I I didn't know what it was, but I felt like I was home, and I recognized, and I told them, "I missed you so much," and they said, "We were always there for you, but you forgot about us." And I felt love. I felt love for the first time in my life, and it was so magical. I cried, Amiga. I cried. I never cried. Well, obviously, I cried at myself at sleep at night, but that was because I felt so lonely and alone. And this time, I felt love. And out of this ayahuasca, I was like, "What was this? What was this?" I became so curious. So I did one more, and then I took a trip to Peru, and I called a
Is
friend.
this a therapy or something like that? Do you see a I don't I mean I don't wouldn't imagine you see a doctor for it. I don't know.
No,
How does the process work?
all
Like,
right,
is it
I'll tell you. I'll
just
tell you.
I'm just curious. I'd never heard of it before.
So what you do is,
I'm a bit of a square.
that's okay. I'll explain. I'll explain. I'll explain. What you do is, because we have a center here in the vicinity in Heerenveen. We call it Heerenveen. It's a city. And you go there, and it's a group of 9 people with two people guiding it, one ceremony master. So this is a woman, Rika, and Rika is absolutely amazing. I distrusted almost everybody in my life, obviously because of all the things I've experienced. But this was the first person I actually trusted, even though I didn't know why or what or how, but I trusted her. And you go into group, and you have a conversation on the tables, who you are and why you're here and what ayahuasca is. And then you get dressed. You have this white attire because this is a part of a ceremony. And you have 9 mattresses laying in a circle, with a bucket next to you and some paper to, if you have to puke or whatever, or you just wipe off your face, or you cry, you just
Right.
blow your
Okay.
nose. And then you drink one tea. This is the MAO inhibitor. This is like an enzyme you have in your stomach, which inhibits the DMT. So if you drink TMT without the MAO inhibitor, it breaks down. So first you drink the MAO inhibitor, and then 10 minutes later you drink the ayahuasca. And then you lay down, and then you have these blankets over you. You bring your pillow and your blankets, and you close your eyes, and they start music, and well, at some point it begins to work, and you begin to see colors or shapes or movements, and or you could see visions, or you could feel things in your body. Something was going on, and what happens in an ayahuasca, I can't really tell you because
Right, right.
every ayahuasca is
But for
different than
you,
every
that
ayahuasca.
what you just described, that's what happened for you.
Yes, that's what happened for me. And it wasn't because of all the things I saw, but it was the experience I had by feeling love and appreciation for myself for the first time in my life. And nothing I ever did in my life has ever amounted to that. So I went to ayahuasca in Peru with a friend of mine, and obviously I didn't have any money. But this friend of mine said, "You know what? We're going to travel for a month. Like I can go for a week. So we're going to travel for a month. I'm going to pay for everything. You just pay for your ticket." And I was so thankful because that's absolutely what I needed, a break. So we went to Peru into the jungle. We did ayahuasca for a week, and man, it was. I have pictures. I can send you afterwards. I can send you two pictures of the first day in the jungle, and you could see like I had this dark vibe around me, and my eyes are dark, and I was tired, and I was so fed up with life actually. And the eighth day, I sit on the boat with like a fishing rod, and I had never had any experience nor patience for fishing, but we were fishing piranhas with a wooden stick and a rope and like a hook and meat. You were splashing in the water, and then the piranhas will go up. You throw the meat in the water. You wait, you pull, and then hopefully you get a piranha. And I felt so alive. I felt so connected. I felt so happy. I felt so calm and serene. And it was like, wow, I've never experienced this in my life. So this was life changing. And all the insights I got, all the feelings that were pent up in my body, and I even lost like 6-7 kilograms of muscle mass because of pure tension. I was like walking around, I had huge arms, and I'm still very fit, but I'm very flexible and mobile now. I can even reach my toes easily. I could never reach my toes. I was too stiff. And now, even though without any stretching, I could like put my hands over my toes. I was like, what the hell is going on? And yeah, and,
Yeah.
and my body does things like the dancing or feeling mobile. I don't have any pains. I don't have any stiffness. I feel light in my head, not lightheaded in a sense that I'm
Right,
high
I
or whatever,
understand. Yeah.
because that's different.
Like a load
And
has been removed from
exactly,
your life. Yeah.
exactly, literally and figuratively. And and what happens then is all things come together. With my business, I coach men,
Right.
and I get men from all over the world, and they ask me, not just the story,
Right.
because they see the story from where I come from, and then they look me in the eye, or they talk to me, like you're talking to me, and like, what happened? How did you do that, man? So obviously, it's not an easy task. Looking your demons in the eye, man. I have been so afraid in my ayahuascas. I was shivering and shaking and crying because things came up that were so traumatic that I pushed away so hard. For example, anger. I had so much anger in my system, and then suddenly ayahuasca showed me the anger, and I was, oh no, oh my goodness, I can't believe I have this inside of me, and the hatred towards my father, for example. And here's the beautiful thing, and here's a beautiful example of the transformation I believe I went through. I hated my father in my life. I resented him. I felt so disappointed in him. He was never there, and he always made me feel like shit. And he was like a huge narcissist. So I couldn't do anything right. So I always felt like I couldn't do anything right. And last Christmas, I invited my father over. And what happened then is I talked to my sister, and my sister wanted to come as well. And I talked to my mother, and even my mother said, "Can I come as well?" And then we sat here at this table where I'm speaking to you now. We sat here as a family after 35 years. And you know what the beauty of the whole part is? There was no resentment. There was not even a speck of anger or judgment. There was just understanding and compassion. I cried. I cried here at the table. I was so happy that not just because that we sat here, but because I realized that I did not have any poison towards my father anymore. And this means if I didn't have any poison towards him anymore, I didn't have any poison towards myself anymore.
Mm.
And I told my father the morning, because he slept here the day before my mother and my sister came. we were in the kitchen, and I told him, Dad, you're 68, and he looks great. And we were in the kitchen, and I told him, Dad, you're gonna die because 68. You maybe not now, but in a few years, or maybe 20 years, you're going to die. But when you die, I will be there. I will make sure, because I know, because I felt so alone and lonely in my life. I know that you felt lonely and alone in your life, and I'm going to be there for you. And I'm going to take care of your body and make sure that you don't die alone. And he cried, and we held each other. Can you imagine how, it just touched me, how proud I am and how happy I am that I am able to transform my own hatred and resentment from and towards myself, and which I projected onto my father, because as an adult, it's my responsibility to change the things I want to change in my life. My life is my responsibility. My happiness is my responsibility. And even though, a lot of people know this, but they still resent their parents, or resent people with the things what they've done to them. And I realized that everything that has happened in my life, and everybody that came into my life that made me feel like shit, or how I responded to them, has made it possible for me to transform this. Because I know, and I told my son, because my son is a very difficult situation as well. He's being bullied, and he feels that he's not needed in this world. And I told him, can I give you a perspective on what you're experiencing? And I said, yeah, it's okay. You can tell me that. And I told him, only the best students get the most difficult lessons, because only the best students are going to be the best teachers. And without hard lessons, you cannot become a great teacher.
Mm.
And he told me, Dad, will I ever come out of this? And this is really this. That's hard to hear. If your son, because it's not about that my ex and I are not doing our best. We're doing everything we can, but he has to go through his own processes again, as well as I did. But I am there to show him that it is possible to, wanting to die for years, to wanting to live more and to engage more with life than ever before. And this is possible. This is possible for everybody. But like we talked about in the beginning of our conversation, it is important to have someone, or to find someone, or to find something that will show you that it's possible. Have good role models. Find good role models. And if you don't have them in your vicinity, take the steps that are necessary to get there. And they're even online. And I know it's hard, because for a lot of people, and I experience this in my life, it's hard to face the truth about yourself, the real truth about yourself. And if the real truth is that you're squandering your life living in a state of resentment and regret and anger and disappointment, then my friend, it's going to be a very hard life. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because taking the steps from where I came from to where I am now was the hardest thing I ever had to do. But now, this is like a compound effect, right? If you go through the darkness, and this is where we started at, if you go through the darkness, that's the place where everything is being born. From darkness, everything is being born. From your mother, you come from darkness. Everything you plant in the ground comes from darkness. So your growth comes from the darkness. We shouldn't fear our darkness, we should embrace it. Everything that lies there is meant for you to grow in that aspect. And if you look at it that way, and you embrace the darkness, you grow into the light, then you become whole. And this is what I did. This is what I'm teaching other men.
Interesting. That's a great perspective. I think that's a really, really good, excellent. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'm like super proud of you, dude.
Oh, thank you
I'm
very
like
much.
super proud of you. I think you've done a really good job, and you should be happy with yourself. And I have a feeling that that you don't have that now. You don't find it difficult to maybe pat yourself on the back, because you've done a good job. And I really do wish you the best in all your future endeavors, to include the project that you have going on right now. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about it, and then share whatever you like about it. But what's the goal? What's the mission of what you have going on too?
All right. So there's two things. I got the message in my ayahuasca for a whole year like almost every time I did ayahuasca, start writing, make videos, and start groups. It's time. Everything is ready for you. But I was scared. I was scared shitless. Yeah, because this would mean I would have to get my face out in the open, really out in the open, not just
Right.
for the people I love, not just for my clients, but for everybody to see. And like this is the second time I actually am. Well, I've written posts, but this is the second time I actually have ever been this open towards everybody in the world.
Hmm.
But I believe it's necessary. So what I did is I bought everything to make videos because I feel that now I have not just experienced a lot of things, but how to transform. Those are I can bring them down into very easy steps. They're going to be difficult to do, but they're very easy to understand. And I'm starting my first men's group. And so I've invited, I thought I needed to invite like maybe 15, 20 people or 20 men to make a group of 7. But now I have the luxury problem that everybody I invited like 9 or 10 men, and they all said yes. And they all said yes because, and I asked them, why did you say yes? Because we've seen you in either in the ayahuasca, we've seen your post, we know what you stand for, we know what kind of a man you are, and we want to be there. I was like, how cool is that? And they all said yes. And not just a little bit yes. They said, oh yes, I would love to do that. I'm really, because men, and that's not, it's not just because of me, men are ready to come together with other men and to experience what it is, what true masculinity for them is, whatever that may be. And not just talk with each other, but sing, dance, and drum, and cry together, and talk about all kinds of subjects like sex or relationships or your work or money, and it doesn't matter. And that everything you say will be received without judgment, and that you can get a loving mirror because obviously you want to learn as well. And from that place, from learning about your own masculinity and sharing this in a space with other men, my vision is to create more value for other men. So because I invited leaders, and I told them, I'm not going to be like the leader of the leaders. We're going to do this together. And I need you to step up your own game to make sure that we create something for ourselves and for each other and for other men around the world to be heard, to be seen, to be loved, to be guided, to be a good role model, so that we can transcend all these idiot and crazy ideas we have about masculinity. This hyper masculinity. You have to be like Thor. You have to have little huge muscles, and you shouldn't show any emotions. And women are there to either to only have sex with and to conquer. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. That is not what true masculinity is about. And whatever it is, we're going to find out together, because
Mm.
masculinity is different for every man. Obviously, there are some guidelines, but you should find out what it means to you and how you express yourself in that way. Because if you live authentically, if you connect to your true masculinity from your true core values, then you will create a life for yourself and others that creates a legacy. And that's what I'm all about.
Excellent. Excellent. What's your website called?
It's www.raymond.dorfel.com. I'll send it to you by Skype, so you can post it wherever.
Yeah, sure.
If anybody has any questions, I'm always very happy to give you an answer. Whether you are a female or a male, doesn't matter. I always give an answer.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, my brother, you have quite the story, and I am happy to see that you have a genuine smile on your face, friend. You are you are. I think I can't guarantee that a whole lot of people are going to see this interview, but I don't think it's too far fetched to say that there could be a few people. And I also don't think it's too far fetched to say that of that few people, somebody's going to be inspired. And that for me is my is my is my mission, to try to show people that there are good people in the world. They're overcoming challenges. This is one way one guy did it. There's no real right or wrong way to get through life. Absolutely not. But we are all, everybody is searching, is trying, is striving for the same thing, which is just to live a life of peace and happiness and That's what I think. I really think that's what we're all shooting for. The everyday person,
Exactly.
like you and me. That's what we're
Exactly.
shooting for. I can't speak to everybody, but I can say that the everyday person like you and I that's all we want, is to live in some sort of peace and happiness. And the journey is long and treacherous. It is a treacherous journey. And some very good people, we've lost some very good people along the way. But there are also some very good people, such as yourself, who have made it. And you are the kind of people that we should be learning from. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing. Congratulations on on a renewed relationship with your dad. I mean, that's
Thank you.
an excellent result of your journey. And I know that for you, people like you and I, it's not over. We
No.
move on. We continue to try to make an impact on the world. And I got a feeling that you're going to do that for a lot of people. So congratulations. I'm happy for you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing. And you know what? Here's how I like to end these things. You know, you've got an audience, you've got an opportunity. It doesn't have to be related to anything that you just talked about. But if you had one thing to share with someone, anyone, one thing to share, a piece of advice, a nugget, something, what would you tell someone?
Never give up on yourself and never give in. Because no matter where you come from, no matter what you've been through, it is all meant to make you the person who you truly are. If you're willing to look at that. But the moment you give up on yourself, it's over.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. There's so much strength within us. It's just
Exactly.
it's not entirely obvious at first, but we are made of so much. You're right though. Never give up on yourself. You really shouldn't. People should not give up on themselves.
Exactly.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
Well,
I appreciate it very much.
Miguel, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my story. And I think that the project you have and the intentions you have, I absolutely love that because people are waiting for good stories, and not just a good story, but a true, genuine story where people can, feel uplifted or inspired or ask questions. And oh man, there is a way for me, and you're providing that platform. So this is my thanks to you too, and my respect for you to you, that you are providing this for other men or other people. So wow, absolutely,
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, buddy.
you're
All
welcome.
right. So this has been another episode of This Way Out. My guest today was Raymond Dörfel. I still butchered it, but he said it at the beginning of he said his name correctly. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. This has been another episode of This Way Out. I'd like to thank my guest Raymond for being on today, for sharing his amazing story. If you like this episode and you want to see future episodes, please subscribe and click the bell to see future episodes. As I've mentioned before, I've got a presence on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. And if you're interested in the other aspects of this Way Out project, I've got a podcast, write blogs, I write feature articles. You can find all that stuff at my website at thiswoe-light.com. Once again, thanks a bunch, Raymond. I really appreciate your time, and we will see you guys soon. God bless. This has been the This Way Out podcast, a part of the This Way Out project. The This Way Out podcast can be found on Google, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and CastBox. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear future episodes, please subscribe. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, recommend future topics, provide feedback, or any other reason, you can comment on this episode or send me an email at thiswoe.light@gmail.com. That's thiswoe.light@gmail.com. If you're interested in the other aspects of the This Way Out project, be sure to visit my website at thiswoe-light.com.